Woo. Jax and Brittany. Episode 2, and we got this type of craziness already, and we still got a whole lot for the rest of the season. Man, oh man. Episode 2, it did not disappoint. It was a mess. We talked about a lot of heavy stuff. But we're going to get into it. It was a lot going on between them two and Jesse and Michelle. A lot. But we're going to get into it. If you're new here, please hit that subscribe button. Do that real quick. We are on the road to 10K. I think I just hit close to 8,000, if not. But please thumbs up the video. Shout out to y'all that watched last week. I think we almost got 400 views on that. Let's get the views up by thumbsing up and dropping them comments. I want to hear y'all's thoughts because I know y'all got thoughts on this episode. This episode was very, very heavy, if you want to keep it heavy and keep it real. But I'm not going to waste too much time. We got a lot to talk about. Let's go ahead and do it. All right, so we get the scenes at the beginning of the episode where we're pretty much going through little fast scenes. We got Danny and Nia. They're pretty much essentially talking about ultimatums on what can happen to have a fourth child. Jesse was FaceTiming Isabella. But we get Brittany and Jasmine over at Jason and Janet's house. And they're in there making casseroles and whatnot. And Jasmine's like, she ain't into casseroles. That's some white people shit. I agree. The only casserole I eat is a breakfast casserole, which is eggs and sausage and cheese, I think. But yeah, I'm not a fan of casseroles either. But Brittany, Jasmine, and Janet, they go sit down to go recap the night before. And Janet is pretty much talking to them about how she had apologized to Kristen for dragging her into the podcast. Exactly. You apologized to Kristen for dragging her into the podcast. You didn't apologize to her for doing what you did all last summer, which was painting her out to be some like psycho crazy liar when what she was saying was the truth. And not only that, you dragged her into that to kind of throw heat and flame on what she was trying to do. You wanted everybody to hate her, and then you went ahead and did that to go ahead and add more gas to the fire. But she ends up saying that pretty much what she was saying with adding them to the podcast was her and Zack not being supportive of her pregnancy, which is just fucked up, especially when it's not true. Like, if that wasn't true on both ends, which we know it wasn't true on Kristen's, we're still trying to figure out if it was true on Zack's or not. But, like, that's a fucked up thing to do, and she's just a manipulator. But we'll get to her in a minute. But she then talks about that, and Brittany ends up asking, like, so what did Kristen say? And Janet was like, she went in more, and it felt like I was talking to a crazy person. No. You're talking to somebody who's fed up with your bullshit, and you just can't handle the fact that she did not accept that fake ass apology. It was fake, and I'm glad Kristen didn't accept it because it was fake. And she saw through you because you're just a manipulator and you mad that she didn't bite on to what she was doing. But Janet ends up saying that Kristen needs to admit to her wrongdoing. What wrongdoing? She exposed the fact that you were being a liar and a phony and a fake manipulative friend. In air quotes, friend. But Janet ends up saying too that she was disappointed that it went south, and essentially she was about to cry and stuff, and she said, I didn't want to cry in front of everybody at the party, so that's why I went off. But she then starts crying, saying that the shit that happened with Zack had her fucked up or whatnot because she was pregnant and she didn't want anything bad to happen, which, I mean, I understand that, but like, these tears, I'm not buying them. I'm sorry, I'm not. Like, all of this stuff is calculated. When it comes to Janet, the things she does is calculated. I don't trust her. But she does all that. Brittany ends up saying, like, she gets why they're mad, but she can't be in the middle of the back and forth and stuff because she's dealing with Jax. And she just essentially wants to be a good friend, but she got too much going on in her own life to be dealing with their bullshit, pretty much. But Jasmine ends up saying apparently Janet had unblocked Zack, which is a step in the right direction with them repairing their friendship. Zack, leave her where she at. She is not somebody that you need to have in your life. Not. But we get a scene with Jax. He's at home. Kristen comes over, and she's walking straight in his house. I don't know what it is about these people on TV, and it ain't just the white folks. I've seen a couple people on black shows that literally are walking in people's house. I know y'all filming and stuff, but like, I can't open up somebody's door and walk in their house. Like, I was raised better than that. You have to open the door and let me in. But she goes in, and it's kind of weird energy and whatnot. But he comes down to greet her, and they go sit down in the kitchen. Try to go sit down in the kitchen. They're at the island, and there's the chair that he done threw. And she was trying to sit on it. And he's like, no, don't sit on that. That's the broken chair. And she's like, yeah, I see. But she sits down eventually. And they pretty much talk about what had happened that night. And he said he's never been that mad before. And he just didn't do what he did for nothing. So he's pretty much stating like, Yeah, I was mad. Yeah, I did a lot, but it wasn't for nothing. Which it makes it seem like he's not taking accountability for what he's doing. So Kristen's like, so you're justifying it? He's like, no, I was just like, it wasn't just me. Which you're low-key kind of justifying it. But she ends up saying, like, your feelings are valid. And what she said was true. Your feelings are valid, but it doesn't mean you have to do something actively, like, do what you did about it. Like, you can actually talk it out. Whereas sitting here going what sounds like absolutely physically nuts, like, it sounds like it could have possibly led into some DV type situation, but that's allegedly. It's not true or not confirmed. But he essentially is saying that he was triggered when he saw the text from Julian, his friend, pretty much with Brittany sending pictures of her naked probably. But that led to him crashing out, which I, again, find it hilarious because that's literally what Jax did. Like, it's funny how it all ends up happening. What do they always say? The way you get him is how you lose him. Even though he didn't cheat to get Brittany, but, like, he's done that with so many people, and it's just funny that it happened to him, and now he's mad. But he ends up saying this at the point where he hasn't been happy since they had Cruz. And Kristen's like, yeah, you need to go to therapy. And he's like, I have been doing that, but I just can't be happy. And he said he misses his sister, his dad, and he just takes it all out on Brittany. Which I'm like, see, now that's the problem. That's supposed to be your woman. That's your wife. That's supposed to be your rock. She's supposed to help you through that. But Kristen ends up saying, yeah, and it's affecting Brittany. But Jax ends up saying too, but what about me? I don't think she cares about me. She does. I will say that. And that's the problem with Brittany. She cares too much about Jax. To the point where, like, we'll get to it later on. But Kristen, she ends up saying, so do you know how many times I've literally sat here with her, crying with her because you done called her ugly and fat? We're gonna talk about this later on. This is fun. It's funny, but it's not funny. But he ended up trying to say I never called her fat because I love women that look like her. Remember I said that. We're gonna get to it later on. But Kristen says, like, I heard it from myself that you done called her fat. And he even said it when she was pregnant with Cruz, which is crazy. Like, come on, Jax, be for real. But Jax ends up saying that you've hit rock bottom when Kristen, he's saying this in his confessional, you've hit rock bottom when Kristen Doute, of all people, comes to check you about your actions, which is true. Because Kristen has had some moments, boy. She's had some moments. They're literally male and female versions of each other. Truth be told. But Kristen ends up saying that it's the fact that you're not allowed to be around Cruz, and that should terrify you because all of this rage and the way you be acting, that's why she don't want you around him, which I do agree with Brittany in that instance. Like, if you act like this, I don't want my kid around you. I don't want my kid to see this type of shit and think it's cool. Because as we know, Jax grew up in a household where it was a lot of, like, that type of energy, and you see how he is. You are a product of your environment. So when you're growing up and you're seeing that shit consistently, it starts to create a pattern that's not healthy for you as a kid, which you're then going to end up bringing into your adult life, which I completely agree with Brittany trying to keep Cruz away. Truth be told. Granted, that is his dad, but like what she's saying later on, he does need to get the help first before being able to freely be around your son. Because who knows when you're going to fly off the handle. He could be sitting right here and you might end up hauling off and hitting me. But Kristen ends up saying, like, you need to think about, like, if Cruz was there, like, whenever y'all have these situations, think about if he was there, what would you do? And he's like, yeah, you're right. So she ends up saying, essentially, I don't understand, like, if you don't feel like you're at rock bottom now, I don't know what to tell you. Like, she was right. But we get a scene of Brittany. She's at her rental house and she's playing with Cruz. Zach pulls up with flowers and Chinese food. They go sit outside by the pool while Cruz is out there playing. So Zach ends up asking if she's heard from Jax. Not Jax. Zach ends up asking Brittany if she's heard from Jax. And she's like, yeah, he texted me this morning saying that he misses his son and pretty much told me, like, all I asked from you is a check up on your husband. Like, you don't check up to see me, but you can send pictures of yourself naked with this asshole. I was laughing and they was laughing too. But Brittany said he just won't get over it. But Zach said that Zach is pretty much bigging Brittany up. Like, you finally getting your groove back. Which, I mean, like, to a certain degree, she does need to do that type of stuff. Because she is a very insecure woman, and that's the problem. Being insecure with Jax, you ain't never going to be secure. You're never going to be secure. But hopefully this helps bring some security to her. But Zach ends up saying that he hopes that she realizes that she's been walking down the wrong path for a long time and she's been accepting the worst, aka Jax. And he's not lying. We're going to get to that later on. my thoughts on that type of situation. But yeah, he's not lying. But she then starts talking about the Janet, Kristen, and Zach situation. And Zach was like, Janet is just as manipulative as Jax, and he is not fucking lying. He's not. He's not. But Brittany sits there and tries to deny it, but Zach says Brittany is blinded by it and pretty much goes in on her in that confessional. He was 100% correct. Like, Brittany is just, and it makes sense as to how she's blinded by Janet, because she was blinded by Jax for the longest time. She's starting to see it now, but she been blinded by Jax for like what? They've been together for what, 10 years damn near? So Zach was like, last year she was saying that I was aggressive, but I wasn't aggressive. I just couldn't hear you because we was in the club, and of course we're gonna be screaming and talking loud because we're in the club with all this music. But he ends up talking about how him and Brittany's relationship has gotten distant because of Janet. And he gets emotional talking about it, and he says, like, I feel like I'm alone or whatever. And Brittany ends up saying in the confessionals, like, the things that Zach had said that night is the reason why she put distance between them. And Zach ends up saying, like, I've also been upset because his boyfriend broke up with him, and he's possibly getting deported back to Canada. And he's like, he's married, but he's separated and whatnot. But Zach ends up saying that Benji, who is his boyfriend or ex-boyfriend now, can't give him a full relationship because he's going to be gone. And Zach pretty much kind of put it out there, like, if you really see yourself being with me for the full time, try and move in with me during the summer and see if we can have a future and figure that shit out. But they wrap it up talking about they're going to be each other's wingmen and whatnot. Jesse and Michelle. These two people that I do not like. It's crazy when you got two people that you don't like. Even though with this situation, I'm more so on Jesse's side, truth be told, but we'll get to it. But Michelle, she ends up pulling up. He asks if she wants some coffee or water. She says she wants some water. And they sit down, and Jesse starts addressing his schedule with Isabella. He got it all mapped out on this little board too, everything. He's thought about it. But he starts it off, and he's like, we decided that we're not going to play these games with these going on trips and whatnot, these spontaneous trips. Like, you're not about to say, I'm going to New York, you got to have her today 2 days before. That's basically what he's saying. And she's like, I haven't done that because I ain't even gone nowhere. And he says, but you've complained about New York. And she ends up saying, I only complained because you've literally had 4 trips in a short period of time. If that is true, I can kind of see that. Because it's like, if we agreed to a schedule and then you got all these trips scheduled and you ain't made it known to me, yeah, I mean, that kind of shifts my whole life a little bit. But she ends up saying that we agreed on a schedule and you tried to act like it's not true, and they start bickering. These two do not, well, yeah, they don't like each other. I was going to say these two don't like each other. Jesse liked her last season, but she definitely didn't like him then, which is why I was like, why are you still with him? Like, she enjoys treating him like shit. Let's just keep it real. But he ends up saying that they're going to start going over this new schedule, and pretty much tells her, like, you'll have Isabella Friday and Saturday, and you're going to drop her off with the nanny. And she ends up asking who is the nanny. He said it doesn't matter. She said it does matter, and it does matter. I do agree with Michelle in that moment. Who's the nanny? And then you talking about something, it don't matter who the nanny. Yeah, it does matter. I need to know who the fuck has my child. Like, what you mean? But Jesse ends up saying, like, you can say whatever you want about my parenting, but it's a reflection of you and who you are as a person. And she gets offended. And Jesse ends up saying, like, she's trying to paint me out to be this absentee parent. But the reality is I'm just struggling with trying to balance my personal life, my real life, my parent life as a single parent, which, I mean, it's understood because, like, it's different. Excuse me. But Jesse ends up getting emotional because he's talking about the holidays and whatnot. And he's like, I shouldn't have to be alone on Thanksgiving and Christmas, which I fully agree. If she's trying to take Isabella from him on Thanksgiving and Christmas, that's fucked up. That's fucked up. If you get her on Thanksgiving, I get her on Christmas. If you get her on Christmas, I get her on Thanksgiving. That's only fair. Those are the two biggest holidays with family. And for him to be without his child on both of the two, but that's fucked up. Fucked up. And I completely agree that's what she's doing. And I know she's doing that because she wants to hurt him. Like, she's evil. He ain't shit, but she's evil. But Michelle ends up saying, like, you love crying, trying to make people out. And this is what I'm talking about. Because he's emotional. I can tell it's genuine emotions, like him not having his child with him on those two big holidays. But she's sitting there saying, you trying to make me out to be like some evil person because you sitting here crying and whatnot. But the reason why I'm doing it all depends on how you treat me. But what about how you treat him? Why are y'all divorced? Why are y'all divorced now? Let's talk about that, Michelle. But Jesse ends up saying that he might get aggravated, but she's always so angry and whatnot. And she said, because you treat me like shit. You don't treat him like shit. Like, let's keep it real. And she says, like, you don't give a fuck. And you even said that you don't give a fuck that I'm the mother of Isabella. And he said, I never said that. She said, I will swear on my mother right now that you did. And he said, but you also swore on Isabella's life that you ain't cheat on me. I said, oh. I said, yeah. That makes you look real crazy, Michelle. You swearing on your own child's life. Yeah, you don't care about your mama, clearly. But he ends up saying, like, she's too short-sighted to say that she just fucked up. And she ends up talking about the girl that he's been dating and how she says a bunch of embarrassing shit in front of her and all their friends and whatnot and their family and their friends and people, just people in general. But she then ends up saying essentially that the girl had told Scheana and a couple other friends that she was sleeping, talking about the girl, she's sleeping with other dudes when she's supposed to be exclusively dating Jesse. I said, oh shit. Oh shit. But Michelle ends up saying that her confessional is like a week into dating. Isabella had already told her that she had already saw that girl up in the bed with Jesse. And Jesse's like, okay, well, we're going to call Scheana. And she's like, call her. So he ends up telling Scheana about what they had just discussed and asked her, is it true or false that she told you that she out here fucking with other men? And Scheana says, yeah, verbatim. I was like, oh, shit. And she said it's some dude from Baywatch. Jesse, you can see it all over his face. He's embarrassed. I would be too. And Michelle's evil ass is sitting there smirking. Did y'all catch that? Smirking. He ends up thanking Scheana for the information and hangs up. It was a simple call. Like, you just tell me true or not. And then he hung it up. But Michelle says we're both angry. He says, I'm not. I don't think he is angry. I think he's on that end where it's just like, he's hurt, but he's like, bitch, I'm going to get you. I'm going to get over on you. Like, he's in revenge mode. She's the one that's angry. It's clear as day. And it's like, why are you angry? Because you're not with him anymore. You got what you wanted. You didn't want to be with him, so you're not with him. So why are you still mad? But, and I guess it's because she realizes even though she ain't with him, she still got him in her life because he is the father of her child. So you got to deal with him for 18 years, truthfully. Like, until she's grown enough to handle herself, she don't really have to be around him like that. But, like, let's be for real. But they ended up tabling that. And we moved to Danny and Jason going to Jax's house to go catch up. Intervention. But Jason ends up saying they wanted to come check up on him, and Jax is like, is this an intervention? And it's funny because they showed a flashback of Jason and Danny talking earlier, pretty much talking about what they about to tell him. But Jason ends up saying that Jax is going through depression and whatnot, and he tries to resolve the depression by partying, which is not helping, which is so true. It's so true. With depression, it starts from within. You got to find the things, healthy things, that help you cope with that. Because I experienced that back in 2020 at a job that I had. It made me extremely depressed to the point where I was thinking about the job when I was not working. Like on the weekends, the day when I was off, I'm thinking about the job, and it just literally got on top of me. And then I had to go to the doctor. They put me on anxiety medication, all types of stuff like that. And they kind of told me, like, Grant, what do you do in your day that makes you happy? And I love going to the gym. Like, I'm a gym rat. I live in the gym. I'm a personal trainer. That type of stuff was what helped me get out of it, because I know once I'm in that state, I go to the gym. It helps me clear my mind. You got to find things that are healthy that help you cope with those situations. But Jason ends up talking about that and whatnot. And Jason ends up saying that Brittany had told him that she's not comfortable with Jax being around Cruz as a single man, essentially. And Jax ends up saying the more they talk, it feels like an intervention. And Jason's like, so what's the underlying issue with this depression? And Danny's like, so yeah, what are the solutions? Like, what are we going to do now to try and fix it? And Jax tells them that he wants to go to a clinic, and he's going to go to a clinic. He's researched it. He's just waiting on the dude to call him back about the assessment, I guess, that he had taken to kind of, I guess, figure out what his mental health levels are. But he ends up saying that he's getting frustrated hearing the same conversation over and over again, pretty much stating like, everybody talking to me about what I need to do is frustrating me. Of course it's frustrating you, because everybody is telling you the truth about yourself, and you don't want to hear it because you don't want to admit it, but it's what is needed. But Jason and Danny, they're pretty much reassuring him that they're trying to make sure that he doesn't throw his life away. Essentially, they're being good friends, pretty much. But they show a flashback of Jax talking to his sister, who also was encouraging him to go ahead and go get that because they have a history of mental health happening in their family. And Jax says essentially he wants to break that curse so that Cruz doesn't grow up being essentially like him. But as they're doing all of this and whatnot, Jax gets a call from the guy from the clinic and pretty much, in so many other words, shoes off Danny and Jason and pretty much tells them to get up out, and they start walking out as he's on the phone with the guy from the clinic. And the guy from the clinic is pretty much running him down. It's 30 days. You're going to pay $30,000. If you do not stay all 30 days, you're not getting refunded your money, which I think is, that's what it is. Like, you have to commit to it. You have to commit to it. Yes, you're paying for it, but like getting up and leaving, no, we're trying to help you out. We're trying to help you out. You got to do it. And when he said that $30,000 for 30 days, Jax looked like, and he threw his phone down. I'm like, you really need the help. Like, you need it. And that's pretty much what he said. Like, you need to commit to it. Like, do it. And Jax eventually does. But he just don't like the fact that he's going to be gone for 30 days. You need them 30 days. You need them. But Brittany, she goes to meet with Michelle and Janet at lunch. And she's pretty much talking about, like, the space that she had kind of created between her, Jax, and Jackson Cruz. And she talks about how she had went back to the house one day when Jax was not there because she had shipped some shit that she would be taking to the rental house. And she ends up finding a thong on her counter. And they laughing and whatnot. She took a picture of it, and there's a thong on the sink with a damn baby wipe on it. And she's laughing about it and whatnot. And she ends up saying that she hates Jax. But Michelle, she ends up talking about how her and Jesse's conversation went earlier about the scheduling and how he agreed on it and then he's taking it back. But she ends up talking about how Jesse's girlfriend had sent her a rage text pretty much threatening to sue her. And which, if it hasn't happened now, I'm pretty sure it's going to happen now because she said like she didn't want them talking about her. And here she is talking about it. But Brittany, she ends up asking like, why is she trying to sue you? And Janet had told her that the girlfriend had told Janet a while ago that she's going to send all of them a cease and desist to get them to not talk about her. Michelle is literally, as they're talking about it, she's just, you can tell she's trying to hold back tears, but it gets to a point where they could not see it. Like, it was all over her face. She was about to break down. And they're trying to comfort her and whatever and asking if she's okay. And she's like, I'm trying to hold it together and I'm trying to act like I'm not okay, but I'm not. I'm just tired. And she ends up saying that she wants to get divorced and she got this girl just harassing her at this point. But Janet, she then talks about how she wants to go to Dave & Buster's and whatnot and asks Brittany and Michelle essentially how they feel if she was to invite Jax and Jesse. And they pretty much state like, it's regardless, we're going to be there. We just hope it's peaceful and whatever. Quick scene with Zach and Benji. They're pretty much talking about how they're hopeful for getting their relationship back on track. Benji essentially agrees to go ahead and move in with Zach during the summertime. Zach is happy about it. Here we go. This is the scene. This is the scene. Jax and Brittany at the house. Brittany comes to the house. Jax is not in there at this point. Her and Cruz get there. She ends up going to get him something to drink. She's in there looking around in the kitchen. Finds a cup with lipstick on it. I said, oh shit. Jax ends up pulling up in the golf cart and she sees it. She's like, oh, fuck, here comes the golf cart. He comes in, sees Cruz. He's playing with Cruz and whatnot. And he picks him up and Brittany says, don't kiss him on the mouth. Because I don't kiss him on his face. Don't do that because I know you've had girls over here last night. And they showed the security footage of a girl leaving the house 5 hours earlier. Crazy. But he said he had a girl named Paige over, which this is what I want to talk about. Paige, they showed a picture of Paige too. Paige looks like an Instagram model. She got the boobs. She got the slim, like super thick, like thin look to her. And then she got the lips and you can tell she's got stuff working her face. Complete contrast to Brittany. Brittany is a thick girl. He said that he likes girls that look like that. Paige don't look like Brittany. Paige don't look like Brittany. Paige look like Stassi, the girl that you used to date. You look like the girls that you usually be out here fucking. But that was funny to me. It's not funny, but it was funny to me. But Jax ends up saying like he broke the rule, but Brittany did too. Essentially talking about Brittany texting Julian. But Brittany ends up asking the nanny to take Cruz out so they can have a conversation. And Jax is sitting there kissing all on him. And she's talking about, you disgusting. because he's kissing their son after he probably was kissing Paige's. You know what I'm saying? But Cruz and the nanny, they end up leaving. Well, no, before that happened, Brittany tells Jax that they need to have a conversation. And he said, I'm not having a conversation with you because you don't ruin my life. I got to go pack. Cruz and the nanny end up leaving. Jax goes upstairs. Brittany then comes up there. And here we go. Jax tells her to go back to Julian because you've been hooking up with him for the last 5 months. Brittany says, no, I haven't. I haven't hooked up with him. And he ends up saying, I documented it. I got it all. Like, stop. But Brittany ends up saying that there was a girl in my house this morning. And Jax said, yeah, in the spare bedroom. She said, no, that was my spare bedroom where my mama sleep when she come here. I said, this is so funny, but it's not funny. But Jax says, I don't care. He was like, you ain't paid a bill in this house at all. Brittany said, yeah, I pay all the bills. And Jax is saying, like, you be hooking up with guys at your place. And she said, yeah, because I have an Airbnb. Why couldn't you do it at Paige's house, essentially? And he says, yeah, I'll be there. I'll be there the other day. I was over there the other day. And that's what really pissed Brittany off. And she said, I don't even recognize who you are. She's sitting there getting ready to start crying. It says, like, you scared me. You hurt me. And she says, you need help. And he says, you need help. This is what I'm talking about. Both of them, truth be told, both of them, are they telling the truth about each other? Truth be told. Because it's like, it's only so much I can feel bad for Brittany. When Brittany came on Vanderpump Rules, probably like mid-series, because I know they changing the cast. But she came on when Jax was on TV for a while. And Jax was Jackson, being the same Jax that he still is to this day. So she knows who she's dealing with. And she's been with her for 10 years. He's cheated on her plenty of times before. So it's like, how much, and then not only that, you ended up marrying him, then procreating with him, knowing that he's still going to do it. Like, it's like, how much can I really feel bad for her? But Jax ends up saying that, and where was I? I just lost my train of thought. She ends up saying that I had to go to therapy for all the shit that you've done. And like I just said, Jax said, if you've been so miserable, you should have left a long time ago. I agree with that. I do. But she ends up saying, like, you need to get help for yourself. You need to get help for our son because he cannot grow up to be just like you. She ain't lied, but the way she said it, it's like, with somebody like him, that's going to hurt his ego. And it did. He's sitting there talking about, I'll never forgive you for that. And she ends up saying, like, I'm not the one that made you throw chairs. Gaslighting him. She was gaslighting him. And he ends up saying in motions for the cameras, like, nah, I'm done filming because this is toxic. And she's like, no, I'm not, but you are. No, both of y'all are toxic. Both of y'all in multiple different ways. Because she's toxic because it's like Brittany needs to learn to love herself. Because if you really loved yourself, you wouldn't put yourself in this situation, and you wouldn't have been in this situation as long as you have been. And Jax is toxic because, look at Jax as a whole has always been toxic. So, and with somebody like Brittany who is extremely insecure, somebody like Jax will run all over her just like he has been. That's why they're in that predicament that they're in right now. But she ends up saying, like, you have to stay at that clinic, take it seriously. And he's like, why? So you can go hook up with other guys? I said, this is not funny, but it's so funny. But Jax ends up telling Brittany, essentially, you need to go. So she starts walking down the stairs and saying, like, he's only going to go. She's telling the producer, he's only going to go for one day and come back. And Brittany, she's standing downstairs in the kitchen. The way she was standing in the kitchen and looking directly, she was looking at the door, but he's coming down the stairs and he's looking over at her while she's standing there looking like she's seeing a ghost. And he's sitting there talking to her, saying, like, you sitting there sending pics to my friends, but I can't have girls in the house when you ain't here. And he ends up saying that she's gaslighting. And she was gaslighting him, but he was gaslighting. They both was gaslighting each other. But Brittany ends up telling him, like, if he doesn't stay the full term at the clinic, she's filing for divorce, which you should have already did. She's getting full custody of Cruz, and she's filing a restraining order on him, and he's going to lose his job, and told him that he cannot be out on the town doing drugs and fucking all these sluts. And I started cracking up. But he was flabbergasted. He was like, and he's sitting there because he mad because he knows she going to end up, is she going to do it? She might end up doing it. But that's what he wants to do, go outside and fuck sluts and do drugs. But he's flabbergasted, allegedly, to save myself. But he ends up saying, like, what you've been doing, like, pretty much what you've been doing the last 5 months. Like, what have you been doing? And she said, I hooked up with somebody because we were separated. Well, not because, but she said we were separated, and I hooked up with somebody while we were separated. But Jax ends up saying, see, she does the same shit that I do. This is the first time Brittany finally got her lick back. And I'm truthfully not too mad at it. Yeah, it was fucked up, but, like, finally get your lick back on him. And that's why he crashing out. Because he ain't used to it really happening like that. He probably thought he would be able to do it, and she would just always be right there and not do it back to him. But she ends up saying, like, you having a this is where it got crazy. She said because he goes over to the stairs, and she comes walking because he's sitting on the stairs, and she comes walking up at the bottom and says, you have an addiction and you need to be honest with the doctor. And she then tells him as well, you've had a coke problem. Everybody knows that you need to own up to it and be real with the doctors. She ain't lying. Because with this situation, you do need to be honest with them doctors. You need to tell them exactly why you be doing what you're doing. And him being on coke, which he admitted to, that is a strong contribution to the way that he crashes out. When you're on that type of stuff, you low-key kind of lose control of your mental and your physical. Which I'm not speaking from experience because I don't do drugs. But from what I know that to be true. But he then says to her, you haven't done coke. And she said, I ain't never saying I ain't never done it, but you're the one that's addicted to it. Drug test me right now. I'll pass. Will you? That nigga got up and said, I said, there's your answer. He won't. He won't. But I'm not laughing at it because it's not funny to be addicted to drugs. It's not funny to be addicted to anything. But hopefully, like I said, all in all, even though I'm laughing, I hope he really went and got the help. We're going to see later on. But I hope he did because, like, that's But she goes back down and she's crying, saying that one day he'll realize that she's the one that truly loves him and she's trying to just get him help. That's really what she's doing, which I do believe. But she's downstairs texting Jason about him losing it. Jason's pulling up because Jason's going to take him to the clinic. And he comes to greet, because she goes outside, and he greets her and whatnot. He's apologizing for her having to deal with that again. And she pretty much runs down what just happened. So then we see Jax in the car with Jason. And Jason Jax ends up telling Jason that he's scared and he feels like he's going to be missing out on things for those 30 days and he won't get to see Cruz for a month. And he said, like, I screwed up. He finally admits that he needs the help. And it's like, yeah, you're going to be missing out on 30 days of stuff, but it's going to help you in the long run. Like, you're going to be able to be there fully, when I say fully, mentally there for your child going forward, and you could possibly end up saving your marriage. But that was the episode, man. That was a crazy episode for episode 2. Episode 2, and we still got way more to go. And if you saw that super trailer, you already know this is only a taste of what we got. But if you got this far, shout out to y'all. Thumbs up the video if you haven't already. It helps so much. Drop a comment down below as well. Share the video as well. And I'll see y'all next Tuesday for episode 3. Peace.